Welcome into the latest edition of Bleav in Steelers, everybody. The live edition of Bleav in Steelers after a little bit of breaking news that just took place. Jared Bailey with you, as always, joined by the incomparable Bucky Brooks. You can check out the Bucky Brooks Show right here on the Bleav Network, as well as all the work that Bucky does over for NFL Media and NFL Network. Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Everything is great, man. What's going on?
Oh, not a lot was happening earlier, and then Aaron Rodgers went on the Pat McAfee show and basically said, yeah, 2025 is going to be the last hurrah for him, concluding a 20-year career that's featured 4 MVP awards and now finishing it up in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. And I think that was something that most of us assumed, like this was going to be his last year. But now with it being, straight from the horse's mouth and confirmed, we know that this is it for Rodgers. First of all, I do want to get your thoughts firsthand on, because we haven't talked about Aaron joining the Steelers. I haven't heard it from you. I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of where the ceiling is now with Pittsburgh?
Well, look, I don't think the ceiling is much different than it was before. Obviously, he's a more accomplished quarterback and player than Mason Rudolph, but I feel like the ceiling is the same. I think if we're being realistic about Aaron Rodgers and the way that he's performed the last year plus, look, he's just been a middle of the line quarterback, middle of the road quarterback. For the Steelers, I think it's really important that they rely on the things that have been successful for them without an A-level quarterback. That means defense, running game, and then having what I call magical play in the fourth quarter. When they were rolling with Ben Roethlisberger, that was the recipe and the formula. It was a top-ranked defense. It was Ben Roethlisberger able to save the team whenever they needed, but they relied heavily on the running game, being able to sustain them. I think it's the same. Aaron Rodgers has proven that he can make things happen in the fourth quarter, but it's about how do they manage the game to get into the fourth quarter. Yes, they have a weapon in DK Metcalf. They still have Pat Freiermuth and some other guys, but by no means is this like one of the vintage or classic Steelers elite playmaking crews. And so I think they still have to kind of play close to the vest on offense, lean heavily on their defense, and then hope that Aaron Rodgers can close it out and what evidently is going to be a swan song in the National Football League.
I was talking to Matt Sims earlier, and he made the comparison to what Arthur Smith did in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown. And I think that there's something to be said for that. But also in the light of, there's, the notion that, all right, well, Aaron's going to want to do his own thing. How much are him and Arthur Smith going to be able to mesh? How do you see him fitting in what Arthur wants to do offensively?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because no one has been able to kind of get Aaron to get off his mark when it comes to the offense that he prefers, what he likes, how he likes to operate, having the full offense at his disposal at the line of scrimmage. Arthur Smith is going to have to navigate that. But I think a lot of this has to come from Aaron being willing to kind of check his ego at the door and do what's best for the team, and particularly the play caller. As much as we want the play caller to build around the top player, which would be Aaron Rodgers, you also have to look at everybody else and what's the best way for the Steelers to play each week for this team to win. It may not be Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball 30 to 35 times. It might be a more minimized or more marginalized role where he's throwing it 20 to 25 times, but he's winning because he is getting them in the right play call, the right run call, the right pass when it's there, those things. So a lot of it depends on how Mike Tomlin is able to get Aaron Rodgers to play nice in the sandbox with the coaching staff. If he plays nice, they have an opportunity to win. But if he is going to come to Pittsburgh intent on doing his own thing, well, then it's going to be disastrous.
Yeah, and it's one thing to hear him on McAfee just talking about everybody, and there's a level of excitement when you hear him talking about, oh yeah, me and Pat Freiermuth have been talking for X amount of weeks and whatnot, and was at Cam Hayward's house for a barbecue, and that's all cool to hear in June, but when things it's September and games are actually starting to be played, how that actually comes together is obviously the big picture. I think you made a good point though as well with the efficiency over box score counting stats, because last year tied for 7th in the NFL, 28 touchdown passes. But I would say that even if he only has like 22, 23 touchdowns, but cuts the interceptions even down to like 5 and is efficient, and they're able to just lean on a Caleb Johnson and a Jalen Warren and have that be their identity, which we know that Art wants to do. I mean, it's what he did in Tennessee with Derrick Henry and how they were successful for so long. if they're able to do that and not necessarily make Aaron be Superman, more or less just be a guy who, they dip into that well of being great rather than lean on it, I think the offense can be a lot better than what it was than we saw with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson.
Yeah, no, I'll say that, like, you want to lean into that, but it'll be interesting because, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both played solid. If you look at the numbers for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're hoping that you'll get that player maybe even a little better from Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know if we can fully bank on that given how he's performed and how he's played. If you get that level of play that's comparable to what Fields and Wilson gave you, well, what can the Steelers do to enhance that? How can they make Aaron Rodgers better? How can they hide the flaws that show up on tape once they start into the season? As they get into the season, they kind of see that, hey, he's limited in terms of some of the things that he's able to do. How are they able to do it? Do they have a team that's good enough to master quarterback's flaws? That's the thing, because we're so used to talking about Aaron Rodgers as the 4-time MVP, the guy that can come in, save the day. But he's 41 years old. He's not the same player that won 4 MVPs. It's been a long time since he's won a Super Bowl. He has proven that he can play winning football, but is he willing to play winning football in the way that the Steelers need him to play winning football? So a lot of what we see in training camp will be, will he submit and buy in, or is this just what we saw in New York where Aaron is going to do his thing and the results are the results, but Aaron is happy because he's been able to do his thing in his final season? That formula, that style won't work in Pittsburgh.
And I think that there is something to be said about going from the Jets to Pittsburgh, where, even whatever side you fall on with the Mike Tomlin side of things, there's a lot more structure. There's a lot more. I think something that he needs, where in New York it was, and Matt Sims made the joke, it was Woody Johnson and then Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to be that way with the Steelers, and I think that that's something that will benefit him in large part. So let's talk about the Swan Song, though, because best case scenario, he's going out like John Elway and riding off into the sunset with a Super Bowl ring. I don't think many people expect that to happen. Obviously, that's the goal that they're chasing. If they get to the postseason and win a playoff game, I don't think anybody in the organization would ever, say it, but I think they would all mark that as a very successful season.
Yeah, they would mark it as successful. It still falls short of their lofty goals. I think in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin will always have like championship or bust in mind when it comes to it. We can talk about they haven't won a playoff game since 2016. I would also say that their rosters have been up and down in terms of the level of talent. And sometimes they've overachieved by making it to the postseason and doing those things. Last year was a disappointment because they were sitting at 10-3 and fell apart down the stretch. And so that is disappointing. And there's a lot of heat. Some of it deserved. That goes on Mike Tomlin for failing to get this team past the opening round of the postseason. What you're hoping in bringing on Aaron Rodgers is, if you're able to get into the tournament, because he has experience winning the tournament, because he has experience in these high pressure games, that he'll be able to maybe up the play of the team. Because honestly, the offense has kind of kept a team that's had a defense that's good enough to get beyond the first round. They've had it good enough, but can the quarterback match them there? And when you get into the postseason, really it comes down to two things. It comes down to the quarterback and the head coach. The better the quarterback, the better the head coach, the more likely your team is going to advance and make a deep run in the postseason. So for Mike Tomlin, I think there's comfort in knowing I got a quarterback that's been there and done it. Can he continue to do it with his game declining? We'll see. But I think there's comfort in knowing the mind of a champion is in the building, and that can help him.
Yeah, Warren Sharp put out a stat the other day that the Steelers last year gave up, or the other team had more opening drive touchdowns than the Steelers offense did. So they gave up a pick six and they didn't score on any of their opening drives. So that's kind of the baseline with what he's entering. And if they can just have even slightly better play than that, then I think they're going to be in a good position. This is still a team that won 10 games a year ago. They were sitting at 10-3 at one point in the year, and obviously the bottom fell out. But if they can just get, I think, average NFL quarterback play, this is going to be a team that can be at least viable in the AFC. I don't think anybody's going to, pick them to go into Arrowhead and win or go into Buffalo and win. We saw what happened last time they went into Baltimore in the wildcard round this past January. But if they can get that extra win and get to 11-6, perhaps draw the winner of the AFC South, maybe we're talking about them going to Houston and saying, oh, okay, this is a game that they can win, or going to Jacksonville and saying, all right, they could probably win that game.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it plays out for them. They have to show that they can be a balanced team, a team that can win in all three phases: offense, defense, special teams. And what a good head coach would do is he'll be able to have an honest assessment of where his team is on offense and on defense, and they will change the game script accordingly. For Mike Tomlin, he has to know offensively there may be some challenges. You still got a young offensive line that's trying to get together. You have unproven weapons in the backfield. You get Kenneth Gainwell, but is he ready to be upper echelon running back? We'll see. You get Caleb Johnson, but a rookie. You just don't know how a rookie is going to handle the transition from college to the pros. But if it works, now you have a running game that allows you to run stretch bootleg, some of the things that are really staples of that system. And you also have a play action passer in Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the best in the business at that. Hasn't been forced to do it a ton, but when he does do it, he had a lot of success, particularly early in his career, middle of his career. But if the Steelers, if they play it straight, run game defense, magical quarterback play in the fourth quarter, they'll win 10-plus games. It's always worked for them in that regard, and it continue to work for them if they stay true to who they are.
I think another thing that really held back the Jets offense last year, had the bum ankle. They couldn't really do a lot under center. But now with a better offensive line, I would argue, in front of him, I do think that getting a little bit more time to throw, not being pressured, that'll also help out the passing game as well. But yeah, time will tell, and we'll find out soon enough. Defensively, I think that there's a lot of better pieces there. Obviously, TJ Watt's in the midst of figuring out a long-term extension, but feels all but certain that he'll get that done. I think that every piece that they have is built to complement him. And I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like on the field. The AFC North hasn't had this same winner 3 straight years since division realignment in 2001. The Ravens have won it the last 2 years. So if history repeats itself, it won't be Baltimore. Would you put Cincinnati or Pittsburgh in a better driver's seat to be that team to win the AFC North if it's not Baltimore?
I think Pittsburgh has a know-how. They have a formula and a recipe to be able to get it. Cleveland, to me, is a long ways away. Cincinnati's defense is not good enough, and they have their own discord in terms of getting their people in. This makes it where, of all the dysfunctional units in the division behind the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers are better suited to manage their own level of dysfunction. And look, when you have a defense that can create the kind of plays that this defense can, particularly when they have TJ Watt in the building, it's a problem. It's a matter of can you take care of the ball on offense and not give it away? Can you play a game where, look, we're not going to beat ourselves. We're going to make the other team beat us. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best that we've ever seen in terms of avoiding turnovers. Last year, the numbers got a little out of pocket for him. But normally, look, he leads the league all-time in like interception percentage. So he's going to take care of the ball and not turn it over. If we get that version of Aaron Rodgers, the one that doesn't turn it over, the one that keeps the team consistently in the right play, whether it's run play, pass play, and finds a way to kind of get this offense galvanized and playing well down the stretch, yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers could be in that conversation, just be lurking in case the Baltimore Ravens have a hiccup or two down the stretch. Pittsburgh Steelers could sneak in and take it.
What would you say is his legacy right now in terms of the upper echelon of all-time quarterbacks? Where is he falling? Is he in that top 5? Is he in a top 10? And if he has a down season, how much does that impact what his legacy is?
Look, he's not in the top 5 because he hasn't won enough at a high level. Like, you can't go in there with one Super Bowl. Like, we've seen the greats. We've seen Tom Brady be in countless Super Bowls. We've seen Pat Mahomes 5. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like in the conversation. So he can't be in that conversation up there because he simply hasn't led his team to the promised land enough. Look, man, I think at the end of the day, when we shake it out, he'll be somewhere from top 10 to top 15, given the numbers. I think we'll talk about the talent. We'll talk about all the things that he's done, but there's a hole in his resume. One Super Bowl is great, but you would think that someone who had a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers would be able to get it. And everyone would point the blame on the teams, the Green Bay Packers, but some of that is we've seen quarterbacks elevate the play of the squad around them. And so he leaves you wanting more. Gold jacket for sure. First ballot, very likely. But will he get into that special VIP section of the Hall of Fame? It'll take him having to win it in Pittsburgh to kind of move him into that conversation.
I was going to say, let's say that, they go to the postseason, maybe they win a game, but they don't win a Super Bowl. Is the Ben Roethlisberger legacy brighter than the Aaron Rodgers legacy?
That's a great one. Ben Roethlisberger has 2 Super Bowls, and we can argue that the first one was on the backs of a talented defense and a running game, but 2 is greater than 1. And some will make the case that not only Ben Roethlisberger, but then you got to have the conversation about Eli Manning. Eli Manning may not have the stats and those things of Aaron Rodgers, but they're talking about in those postseason runs, he was clear and apparent like the best, and he knocked off Tom Brady twice in the biggest game.
That's the big thing.
Because Aaron Rodgers has not been to the big game enough, that's where it's subject to interpretation. That's where he makes himself vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think for him too, like there does seem to be a level, and just watching the interview and there does seem to be a level of like he's at peace with this. He's ready for it to be his last year, and just ready to try to make the best of it. And whatever comes with it, he's at peace. So good for him. Wish nothing but the best for him, and hopefully the Steelers can can come away with some success this season, perhaps, and the postseason drought. What does it say for Mike Tomlin's legacy, I guess, as well? Because they're going to be their 5th straight year with a different quarterback starting week 1. And, I know a lot of people who are on the farthest side of the Mike Tomlin camp will say, we'll look at the roster and things of that nature. People on the other side, doesn't matter what Mike Tomlin does. I don't think he'll ever get the appropriate amount of credit from those people. Folks in the middle, I think, would say, all right, well, he's had how many different chances with a bunch of different coordinators, bunch of different quarterbacks. And if the same result is yielded, then at some point we got to look a little bit closer at the head coach. So what does this season mean for Mike Tomlin's legacy? And, especially everything going on in the last 8 years where they've been, had a goose egg in the playoff win section.
Well, I think it goes without question that he is going to be a gold jacket guy, just given the level of success that he's had. I think the big thing in Pittsburgh is, and it's hard, black and gold lenses, glasses, sometimes they call it like the championships, all the rings, all the success that the Steelers have had in the past makes it where it's championship or bust. I think the bigger thing would be if they don't win in the postseason, at some point you'd be like, man, you have to be able to win in the postseason to really be stamped and certified as an all-time great. I think he's viewed as an all-time great because he has the streak with non-losing seasons. But then a lot of people will say like, yeah, but he falls right in the middle. Like, good, not great when it comes to the level of success. And it's always debatable in terms of like, well, how good is the Steelers roster really? Like they've never fallen all the way off, but sometimes they haven't maximized what they had. And I think about the Lev Bell, Antonio Brown teams where they had talent where you think, man, this team should be so much better than what they've done. I think it's complicated. I think his legacy is complex. I think this year will continue to write pages and stories on that. But it's a big year because he has to get the monkey off his back. If not, the noise is just going to get louder about, like, is he an underachiever? Can they get to the next level with him? It'll go back to he won with Cowher's team. Can he do it on his own? All of those things. So I think for him, he can squash a lot of debate if they're able to have a level of success. But there's no doubt that he's one of the best that we've seen in the modern era. But you would like to see him, particularly if you're a Steelers fan, kind of stamp it, because he has a chance to do what Andy Reid did without leaving. If he can kind of like remake himself and win at the highest level. Because remember, Andy Reid had a lot of failures in Philly, goes to Kansas City and becomes the ultimate winner. I think for Mike Tomlin, can he do it with the same organization and franchise to change the narrative that's been written about him?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, it does feel like a lot of like the end of Andy Reid in Philadelphia right now in Pittsburgh. Obviously, he hasn't had, I think Andy had a 5-11 season after they had, the quote unquote dream team put together, and that just didn't go right. But it does feel like there's a little bit of a semblance of that. I think with Mike, and you're right, there's always going to be that level of he doesn't get enough credit, but there's also going to be he's in that weird area. So certainly, a fair discussion to have in some regards. But
it's a hard one because I've fallen on the other side of the argument for a while. But then I'll be honest with you, last year, like I felt like it was really set up for them to do something. Now, he made a
Yeah.
move that some would view as controversial when he pulled Justin Fields and put Russell Wilson in, hoping that Russell Wilson's experience and expertise would get them to the next level. And then they just fell off the cliff at the end. Five straight losses, never came out of the thing. And we can talk about how hard the schedule was or whatever, but it's shocking that your team is positioned there. Some would think that, hey, man, the coach can get you from 10 to 12 on tactics and strategy, and they just weren't able to pull themselves out their tailspin.
Yeah, and we also have to consider the fact that, hey, he's entering year 19. Chuck Noll was there for 23 years. He's extended through the 2027 season. Like, how much longer is he going to want to be around? Like, he'll have that job as long as he wants it. They're not going to let him go. At least in my opinion, he's not going to get fired. He's going to hold that chair as long as he wants it. But again, creeping up on 2 decades with the job, how much longer is he going to want that chair?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I think that's ultimately on him in terms of how long does a competitive spirit drive on the inside. Knowing him, I would say, look, he's gonna be there a minute. Like, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for him to walk away from it because he loves ball, he loves competing, and those things. And in some places, you wouldn't get that opportunity to kind of go out on your own terms. Pittsburgh strikes me as that place where, much like Chuck Noll, much like Bill Cowher, you tend to ride off in the sunset when you want to ride off in the sunset. They don't necessarily dispose of you because that's not how Pittsburgh is operating.
And a lot of it, too, is you hear every year from, like, guys who sign there, and during the intro press conferences, like, hey, why'd you want to come to Pittsburgh? They point at that guy, say him. Like, I wanted to play for Mike T. So he obviously still has a lot of pull with a lot of these guys, and there's a reason why they want to play for him. It's just a matter of, all right, put together a full 17-game season of it rather than, all right, let's start 9-4, 10-3. But once Thanksgiving hits, you can set your watch to a little bit of a skid taking place. And that's something that they really need to hone in on fixing, because it is something that has bit them in the butt a few times over the last few years.
Absolutely. It's bitten them. It's hurt them. It's cost them. It's been a problem. And they got to figure out how to get it done. And some of it, I would say, is just make sure they're always buttoned up in these key moments, like I's are dotted, T's are crossed, so they can finish the game the right way. They haven't consistently done that, and that has hurt them when they get into these high-end marquee matchups against the elite of the elites, the heavyweights in the AFC. And that only comes down to how much talent you have. It comes down to, man, can you execute the tactics that are being put out there, and can you make sure that you dot the I's, cross the T's, and make the other team beat you, as opposed to you giving up an egregious error that lets the team kind of win.
All right, I've asked everybody this over the past few weeks. It's June 24th right now. If you had to predict what the Steelers, what kind of season we're talking about them having in January, what did they do in the 2025 season?
I think that they have a season like they always have. I think they always surprise you. They find a way to get to 10. So they find a way to get to 10 wins. And then in the postseason, look, man, it's about matchups. I just don't know if Aaron Rodgers has enough to take them to the next level. They can get into the postseason, but in a conference where we're talking about the quarterback play, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and others, Aaron Rodgers is going to rank as the lowest ranking quarterback if he gets into the tournament. Hard to win a quarterback driven league when you don't have the best quarterback leading your team.
Time will tell. I'm looking forward to seeing. I mean, I will say this as a fan, just from a pure fan point of view, it's the most excited for a season I've been since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Had a little bit of it last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I was never much of a Kenny Pickett guy. Long term, people who follow me know that.
Yeah.
But I think just from a pure like fan point of view, I'm gonna allow myself to buy in and hope that there's a little bit of magic left in the right arm of Aaron Rodgers. And we'll see what happens. Bucky Brooks, I appreciate you for joining me, my friend. Again, listen to the Bucky Brooks Show right here on the Bleav Network. Anything else you want to plug before we get you out of here?
No, I love it, man. Thanks so much for having me on. I look forward to coming back and kind of reviewing where the Steelers are at various times of the year.
I love it. You always have an open invitation. Everybody, thank you guys so much for tuning in, whether it be on the Bleav YouTube channel as a podcast. We'll talk to you soon on Bleav in Steelers. Take care.